Hello, everyone. Wherever you are in the world, I've just come back from Sainsbury's. I rushed over, dropped down those bags because I was worried I was going to be late for my fantastic guests here, who I've known for quite some time through the architecture world and recruitment world. And I am super honored to have someone here that I've respected for a long time. Please welcome Damon. So Damon Bowen-Ashwin. That is a double, triple barrel name of awesomeness. Damon, it's so good to have you here. How are you?
All right, thanks, Stephen. And thanks for rushing back. And sorry to make you have to say my name because it is a mouthful. Even I get a bit sick and tired of how long it is sometimes.
No, I like it. I just, in my head sometimes I was like, is it Ashwin Bowen or Bowen-Ashwin? But I had a cheeky look and I got it right. But no, and don't worry about the Sainsbury's bags because it was me who organized it, so I should be the one on time. But Damon, we'll forget Sainsbury's for a second because they're doing really well, and we're not about that. We want to talk about architecture. We want to talk about all the good stuff. But it's quite interesting because you're not currently you're indirectly in the architecture world, and you have all these communities now. But perhaps you can tell me what you've been up to for the last year or two.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as you know, I'm from the architecture background, but for the last year or so, I've transitioned. Well, literally a year ago, I opened up my business, Adaptive Flow Coaching. So I've moved into life coaching. So gone from helping people find a career to helping people figure out how can I get the best out of myself in life and what's holding me back and where do I really want to go?
Right.
And sometimes it's career related, sometimes it's not. I still have a couple of clients. I've kind of diversified a little bit away from architecture, but still have so many great contacts within the architecture industry and a couple of clients at the moment who are from my days of being in the architecture world. So yeah, slight shift, but almost a continuation on, but a bit more depth into people's lives now, as opposed to just on the career side.
I find it fascinating, and so I can learn a lot from you here as well. Because let's talk about what you were doing before, and I still do to an extent of recruitment. And is that R word that everyone worries about? Oh my gosh, it sales is people are leaving the podcast now. They're hanging up on Spotify. But it's really interesting because recruitment is involved with people's professional lives, which does have a knock-on effect on the personal life, and the personal life has a knock-on effect on the professional life. And the thing is, recruitment is, and to an extent, it involves in all that facets, and that we have to understand all those facets because it is important to understand the people with where they are in these big decisions. However, what was quite interesting is in recruitment, you can only do so much, isn't it? I'm not a life coach. I can advise the most efficient ways to maybe do your CV, your portfolio, how to handle situations. But ultimately, it comes down to the person to choose what they want to do and where they want to go. So I would love to know a little bit about then, can you run through a typical scenario that you might help people with and how it's different than recruitment before then, Damon?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess coaching did come into recruitment a little bit, like from your experiences, like as well. I would imagine, when you say it is kind of limited, but it comes in little areas where we're
Little bits.
We're talking to a candidate saying, okay, well, I've got to have this conversation with my boss about how to leave. And you want them to leave in the right way for the right reasons. And so it's about kind of empowering them to be able to kind of confident enough, have those kind of conversations with their boss. So it did kind of creep in little ways, didn't it? But now my focus is very much on, I come from a point of view probably of kind of health. And that's not what people come to me typically always for. But at the end of the day, I just look at things from a health perspective of how to get the best out of ourselves when our bodies are running optimally. So typically, people come to me at the moment because they're feeling a little bit stuck in life. They know where they want to. In fact, I was going to say they know where they want to go. Sometimes they don't. They know where they think they might be wanting to go, but they know something's missing. So perhaps it might be that they've been in a job for 15 years, and they're looking for a bit of a change. On In contrast to that, they might have
Yeah.
been in their job for 15 years and they're just missing that spark. And they've probably been a bit worn down for the last 2 years of COVID, having to go working from home. Have we not? Are we doing this? What's kind of going on? How's it affected the industry? Any industry, everyone's been affected by COVID.
Yes.
And we've lost a bit of confidence, and little bit of self-belief. And my job is to help people start to kind of believe in themselves again. And usually people do believe themselves, but
Yeah.
probably not to the extent that I think, or I believe that we should do. We don't really give ourselves enough credit. We talk to ourselves like we're our own worst enemy. Our self-talk to ourselves is like, it's horrible. If we talk to our friends how we talk to ourselves, then that quote of "we'd have no friends," which is pretty true. And generally, we're probably going through life, we're fairly happy, but we've lost a bit of self-confidence. And that's not all the time. It's just it crops up in certain moments when there's a bit more tension, there's a bit more pressure. And my job is to help people to really start to believe in themselves, but not just in a way of, hey, I can do this. It's actually, you know what, I can actually do anything. And I mean, absolutely anything if I put my mind to it. And it kind of goes so much more beyond to what we think we're capable of.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, look, there's so many nuggets there because I tell you what, there's been a few times because I had a business before and we were joking just before we recorded this podcast because we both in recruitment. I used to run my own business and we'd occasionally do this weird dance that recruiters do of seeing each other but not really talking, which is absolutely bizarre because now the more recruiters that I speak to, it's just a fact of life. You have competitors, much like architects competing with other architects. Just because you're running for the competition doesn't mean you can't say hello to each other. So hopefully matured in that front. But the point where I was going with is that when I used to run that business, there was times when it was going amazing, and there was also very stressful times because I entered a business commitment, which is effectively a relationship. There was two partners. We had an equal split of the company, and there was good times, bad times, and I probably went into it a little bit naive. And there's only so much you can talk to your friends about it before even I was aware. I didn't want to be that guy, like when you're having a pint to bring everyone down, or I was even boring myself. And so I remember at the time, I had a personal therapist, which is not exactly what you do, but what I'm saying is that it was extremely beneficial for me. And I don't see any stigma talking about it because if I didn't have that at that time, I think just everything the world would have completely swallowed me through. And then also I can see what would have been useful at the time for someone like yourself, a life coach, was during an awkward point where I was kind of coming to terms with I didn't really want to do my part 3, and then I wanted to do something else. And I don't know what the expression is, Damon, but I kind of went out of the frying pan. Was it like out of the saucepan into the boiling pot or whatever? Basically, I went from into the fire because I went from architecture to recruitment. And, it's like you rock up in recruitment and it's like, okay, make 30 calls, go. And you're like, oh gosh. But it all worked out in the end. It would have been good to have someone then. And just to center it back to what you're talking about, yes, in terms of, because especially last year during the pandemic, while I do a bit more recruitment now, there's this thing called covenants. I'm sure architecture businesses have it as well, where I couldn't really do as much recruitment. So I did a lot of career coaching. And what I learned is that I would talk about CVs and portfolios, and I still do that to a little extent, but it was somehow, I could see the core issue in that person. It wasn't really the CV or the portfolio they were talking about, or it wasn't just about getting the CV and portfolio out. There was something unfulfilled, or there was something that they were coming to terms with. And in the CV portfolio session, I can only do so much. And what I learned is, I was involved with one of the 2 charities, and I was speaking to an architecture charity, and I was saying like, well, actually, I think this person would benefit from long-term coaching. Of course, that's not possible for everyone and every time, but it's massively beneficial So I'm saying, Damon, and I'm sure you see that as well. It's just sometimes getting the CV or portfolio ready is the tip of the iceberg of all these thoughts and feelings underneath, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you could have really touched on a great point there. And it's lovely that you saw that just within your kind of within your realm of kind of career coaching. Because as you say, we present all these as we're kind of talking about putting together our CV or the next move. We're
Yeah.
displaying a lot of essentially we're showing to whoever we're talking to how we view the world, and
Yeah.
it's reflected in how we view our CV. But actually, what it means is I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that, and if we're getting too over analytical on things or worrying about this too much, worrying about that, we're getting really attached to things. So it certainly does give us, as when we're in the recruitment world, it gives you a little insight into something else is going on in that person's life. Hence the
Correct.
move in the first place. And then, wow, they've got so many things to consider. But why are they really making this move? And we don't always get to the kind of in recruitment, don't always get to the kind of bottom of that. But
No.
quite often, it's not just for the career move. It might be because they're feeling unfulfilled. Might be because they grew up and their dad was an architect, and or their mum, and they felt that's the route for me. And it was kind of following the family footsteps. And then 20 years down the line or 10 years down the line, they're thinking, oof. But essentially, the world we see tends to be a reflection of where we are as a person. So
Yeah.
yeah, very much so. When you're having a talk with someone about their CV and their career, how they're presenting to you is very much, they're not giving you the exact story, but they're really giving you their characteristics. They're giving you a real insight into what's going on, and there's something holding them back for something, or there's some fear-driven thing in there, whether it's fear of
Yes.
judgment, whether it's fear of failing, or whatever it might be, or fear of expectations of themselves, got really high expectations, or quite often being too hard on ourselves. I mean, we're all pretty hard on ourselves, aren't we? And
Yeah.
I'm getting better at not being hard on myself because
Good.
I've learned the value of just treating me like becoming my own best friend, as corny as it sounds, but loving myself and becoming your own best friend. You're like, wow, your world starts to change. But yeah, you certainly do see a glimpse of that when, and probably a little bit more when you're in the recruitment world and people are making these big life-changing decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I say it so easily, Damon, and then I'm guilty of running with the ball myself. We all do it. And that's, I think, the important distinction that me and you are trying to get to here is that people are not hiding stuff. They don't know and that
Mm,
it's the role is you have to dig it out of someone. It's a bit like the architect's role is when they get the client, you got to get the client, or what the client really wants when you're designing this house, but you have to go through that process of letting the client know that your vision is the right vision. And there's a few components in that. There's trust, there's experience and understanding. And that's, I tell you what, the first thing when I had a therapist a while ago is that to get over is that they're there to support you unequivocally. But that also means they don't always agree with everything you say, which is a bit of a shock at first because
mm,
it depends what you're looking for and how you're going into it. And I guess a bit like, there's loads of stories because, in recruitment, we could talk for ages about that person who wanted this and that. And, I've got all these great stories as well, but it is all people and it's all psychology and it's people growing throughout their careers, which is really important. So it is, it is a fascinating, process. So tell me, Damon, there must have been something. Was it just like the 1,000 CV or something? And you were just like, you know what, I've had enough of this. Or was there, or did you feel like I can't be bothered with Stephen Drew looking at my LinkedIn profile anymore? Was there a particular reason you left me stranded here?
there was one main reason, but very before I do that, I just want to kind of come back to something because I
Please
really
look
value
around.
mental health, and
Yeah.
just love the fact that you're sharing so openly about kind of having therapy, because it's kind of has been a bit of a taboo subject, hasn't it? And I had some last year and the year before last because of a few things I was going through. And as you say, it's just there to kind of support you, and maybe you
Yeah.
don't always hear what you want to hear. But it's just looking after your health. It's that simple. So as men, we're not very good always at
No, the strong silent type, which
Yeah,
if you ever watched Tony Soprano, doesn't always go that well. The strong silent type, it comes out in one way or another, right?
exactly. So look, credit to you. Thank you for kind of sharing that. I think
No
that's
problem.
hopefully I would take that as someone's listening to this thinking, right, okay, I'm not the only one, and that's the message I take.
Yeah,
You just sharing that as you're not the only one, and we're not. So someone else has done. Hopefully you can inspire someone else to kind of ask for a bit of support in whatever way they
yeah,
need it at some point.
yeah. And probably just before we go back to the question that I asked you, I know I'm putting off my own questions here, but another good thing is it's not even just, I think, support therapy, and there's loads of really good resources out there. You have the Architects Benevolent Society, which kind of support with mental health. The people like yourself are awesome. But also, while working last year with Accurate Lowry, which is an architecture practice, I was quite impressed because I got a lot of exposure to the senior management team, and they have non-equity directors, non-equity advisors, and
Mm,
it's a different form of this open talk. But it was almost like business therapy, business coaching. It wasn't a personal thing, but it was extremely rewarding, it's so easy to dismiss this at first because I was just like, how much are you paying that guy for a day? But then obviously this person who's a non-equity advisor has like 50 years of experience of maybe something that can offer the business a lot of value. And again, it was another example, slightly different of what we're talking about, but support in another way.
yeah.
And then this, in terms of the business sense, there was a financial return, but then also, for example, I've learned a lot from Macro. I come in and when I talk to them about recruitment and optimize that process. So you can always learn from these different things. And I find it really valuable, mm, you know?
Absolutely. I love the fact that just we could all remain open-minded to learning for the rest of our lives, and it's almost as simple as that. Just be
Yeah.
open to learning and just see where the support comes from. Don't be afraid to ask for it, and it comes in all shapes and sizes, as you say.
That's it. I mean, if anyone wanted to take away one thing from this podcast, it would be that. But we got a bit more time, my Sainsbury shop's done, so I'm in the clear. I've got the time booked off. I'd love to know if you were happy to talk about it. So transitions, because I transitioned from architecture to recruitment and do bits and bobs of other things, and you spent a long time, getting into roots in architecture. You work with these amazing architecture practices. You met awesome candidates, and you decided, I'm going to do something a bit different.
Yeah, and basically, it wasn't just that you were staring at my LinkedIn profile, and isn't it funny? You would.
It's weird.
Every now
It's
and
weird
click
human
on,
behavior. Yeah,
as recruiters, you don't want to. And you know what? As I was just before I left recruitment, one of my little projects was to try and set up a committee where recruiters would talk to each other, have a bit of a round table meeting once a month or once a quarter, and say, what have we learned about the market and who's messing who around, or whatever it is? How can we support each other and not just be at each other's at each other's throats, because that's not actually how it was. But there is that kind of stigma of, I can't talk to him because he's from another agency. And
it's a bit like, if I can use the analogy, David, when I came to London, I was in college. I grew up in Wales, and I was like, I'm going to study in London. They're like, are you sure about that? They don't like us over there. You know that, right? And I was like, well, I've kind of already going. They're like, you shouldn't tell people you're Welsh in London. And then it was just this absolute nonsense. And then it was incredibly accepted. And I think in recruitment, it's the same thing. Everyone I speak to, it's fine. But there's this thing of, don't share. I don't want to share. Maybe someone will do something bad, which is just so counterproductive.
It is here, but having worked in Dubai and Hong Kong, we'd go out without competition, and you'd pretty much openly talk about, you got Johnny and now you got, Jimmy and whoever it was. And it wouldn't be because you're an expat, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're limiting the people and you don't care. You're just bonding. You're like, oh, but when you come back to London, then it was a little bit different. Yeah. But, again, we're getting a little bit sidetracked, but
it's my fault. I'm terrible hosting skills. Okay, sorry. So you transitioned from recruitment into coaching.
into coaching, and it was probably on the cards at some point, but it just happened a lot quicker than I was going to, because I'd read so many since about 2005. But I remember when my mum bought me a book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma, and Susan Jeffers' book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And so I've been reading self-improvement books for years and years and years. And these people I was looking up to, I thought they were called self-improvement gurus, or I didn't even know what they were called. I just thought they were kind of motivational speakers. Didn't realize they were coaches. And then, so 2019, it'd gone really well. I'd had a great kind of billing year, as kind of one half of Sketch. And, I'll be back in the UK for kind of about 5 years at a time. And I was generally pretty happy in life. Something wasn't quite right, but I was kind of fairly happy and making kind of strides. And then December 2019, I've been having these kind of amnesia kind of episodes where I'd just I'd wake up in the morning and only for about 5 minutes, but I'd know where I was, but I'd be confused about something. And the first time it happened, I was like, right, I'm out in France. How did I get out here? When did I come out here? And then eventually it would come back. So I went
Wow.
to yes, and which was a bit freaky, but I'll put it down to it was always 2 days after,
Hangover or something,
it was
right?
always 2 days after drinking. And what was happening was my brain was getting dehydrated, and the contrast of the two, of kind of drinking and then kind of was kind of swelling my brain a little bit at the time. I didn't realize, and causing me to have kind of type of epileptic seizure. So I went to kind of go and get it checked out, and I thought I was thinking, I've probably just got some sort of chemical imbalance type thing.
Yeah.
But the neurologist said, well, let's do some tests, have an MRI and also have an EEG, which kind of looks at the brain signals, all that type of stuff. I'm probably not saying the right medical terms here, but
Don't worry.
and I wasn't expecting anything back from the MRI. I was just expecting the EEGs to say, "Oh, you've got a chemical imbalance of this." But that didn't quite happen. Bang! I get the disc back, or the report back, and it says you have a brain tumor.
Right.
Really wasn't expecting it. I knew something was going on, and that was just pretty bloody big shock to the system.
Of course.
Thankfully, it was. But I'd had a scan done and I hadn't had the contrast, which is where they inject you with a dye so they can see essentially whether it's aggressive or non-aggressive. And so I got the news of you've got a brain tumor. It's pretty big, but we don't know. We don't know whether it's cancerous or not. Essentially, we don't know whether it's high grade aggressive or low grade kind of slow growing. So I had another day of waiting, as I have another scan to say, oh, what type is it? And kind of all sorts going through my head, but eventually get the news that you've got one, but it's slow growing, low grade. We can operate. We'll never remove all of it because it's not defined, but we then monitor you, but life will continue for the moment, and we need to be careful of it, but, we can do something about this. So it was enough of a kick to kind of go, right, I think something needs to change in your life, and maybe this is a chance for, to kind of move out of recruitment and into something else. And I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking that subconsciously. I wasn't kind of saying, hey, I'm moving out of recruitment. What actually happened was I had the operation February 2020, just before COVID happened. And then as COVID happened, the country locks down March 23rd. I'm left with running a recruitment business with no jobs and a lot of time on my hands. So it was a great time for me to kind of reflect and start thinking. A client of mine had posted on LinkedIn saying, I'm at the end of my coaching qualification. In order to kind of qualify, I need to do 10 external coaching interviews. He was up for some free coaching. So I sent him a message and he said, well, you're too late, but let's have a chat about coaching anyway. And he put me at a chat. So Richard Marshall of Perkins Will over in LA. Thank you very much for setting me on this course with this particular kind of coaching organization. And I looked at the website, spoke to a few people there, and I was like, these guys seem like they're talking my language. They talk about energy, and it just felt like genuine as opposed to a sales marketing type thing. And I think because COVID was happening, it kind of gave me the opportunity to A, recover a bit after the op, but B, think, all right, well, I can start doing a bit of personal development at the moment, and I'll take on this coaching qualification, but look at it as a bit of personal development. And if it goes into coaching, brilliant. But if not, I'll just be a bit more aware, a bit more conscious, and be better able to kind of handle life and get the best out of myself. So that started, and so I started the kind of coaching, what was it, July 2020. It was a 9-month program, pretty intense, and came out the other side. So about a year ago today, roughly-ish, set up Adapt and Flow coaching. And first couple of months were a bit tricky, just trying to find new clients, and not too much was happening. And but I was starting to build some confidence and get a few clients here and there. And I'd starting to find a bit more of a groove in life, but also still something wasn't quite right. And I went for a scan in May 2021 because I have these scans every 6 months, just to see what's going on with the little bit of residual mass that's left in there. And it showed a bit of growth. And I, on the one hand, was expecting it. On the other hand, wasn't expecting at all. So I know that's a bit of a contrast. Knocked me absolutely off my feet for about 3 weeks. So I was just in fear mode, panicked. Strangely, I just won a client at the time, a kind of a contract with a firm called Bliss, a digital advertising tech firm. And that work was really useful for me because, and it was at the very beginning, but I just found I was really enjoying the conversation. They were making me feel better because I actually found something that I really enjoyed doing. So I found that having a purpose in life and having something you really enjoy doing, for that 1 hour session, each time it's like, right, okay, I get to talk about life here and how to get the best out of ourselves. So that could have helped me through, actually. I had this kind of 3-week period where I was just in pieces, and then the contract kind of started. And timing was pretty good for that. But I managed to just turn things around. I think I got a bit of inspiration from loads of different things. Wim Hof, breathing, cold showers, and which is great for mental health, great for your immune system. It's great for so many things, and it kind of gave me the mindset, or helped me kind of start to get the mindset. I also read a few books around people who'd gone through different diseases or kind of cancer survivors and radical remissions, it's called. So the 9 key factors that people have in common when they're given some sort of diagnosis, and mine wasn't you've got 5 months to live or even 3 years to live. It was a lot different to that, but it was still, you've got something life-threatening. So I read all these books and got some inspiration from them. I suddenly realized, got this kind of, my coaching skills started to kind of kick into place a little bit in terms of, well, we've got so many choices available to us every single day. Instead of just thinking, once I kind of push through the fear and almost surrender to it, or like, oh, this is scary. Actually, when you push through, you think, well, what am I actually scared of? And then that's almost a different kind of conversation altogether. But I eventually kind of got to a place where I pushed through the fear and realized that I had so many more different choices, and I could take a bit of power back and take control of my life a bit more, and even start by making little changes to my diet, but also started believing that what we put in our mind is so crucial. So if you think about our mind as the blueprint to everything else that happens, so the thoughts that go in just basically make our belief system and the whole world outside, or the way we see the world. So I even got to the extent where I am now, where I believe we can actually do anything if we put minds to it, including healing ourselves. So no matter what it is, because we just have to create the right conditions, but we also have to believe it. And we've also got to give the blueprint to our mind so that it can then start creating it. And then the hormones are released and it kind of happens that way. Don't know if I'm quite explaining myself, but look.
No, I
a lot. So,
no, I get it. I was enjoying listening, and it's quite, it's quite interesting. hearing your story. There's a lot of emotions going through my head as well, because I imagine, as you said, you just is shocked for a second. We talk about the news of getting a brain tumor. It's uncanny. I know people say a lot, but I think you always think these things never going to happen to you until they do, right? It's like it's one of them. It's one of these things out there. I know it happens to people, but there's this weird thing in your brain, isn't it, where you're like, me?
Yeah,
Like,
can't be me. No.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll be all right. Yeah.
yeah. And then I always think I can't relate to that. So that's why it's interesting to hear, I guess, where I can relate on the business front, which is definitely interesting, is because I too had a second lease of life during the pandemic, because like you, unfortunately, Damon, when things are up, yet the phones are ringing and we're busybodies around town. But the pandemic, and I was on the way to a meeting, and I'll never say the name of this person, but you'll laugh. They were like, yeah, this pandemic will be over in 2 weeks. And I was thinking, now there's no one around, right? There's no one around. And I went with my colleague for like a last lunch. And then the week after, it was furlough world, or whatever you want to call it. And I was on, I was like, yeah, we really value you, Steve, but I'm going to put your team on furlough. And then I shortly went after, and it was like the domino effects. And at the time, I was at a loss with what to do, and there was like a week or 3 weeks of, I call it, and it's not far from the truth, so I'm not exaggerating, boozing and Netflixing, it's just, living, and not really looking after myself in that front. And I wanted to do something which was stimulating, which became into the architecture social, which, and if I'm being really honest, it's a blessing and the burden, because I think I went too far. I've reined it in now, but my strength and weakness is when I do something, I do it 100%, but it can almost be at expense of what I've learned as of other sides of my health or personal relationships and not seeing friends and stuff. And that, especially when you're young, you can kind of get away with it a little bit, but my body clock and the world is just keeping on going. So, it's catch-22, because I was developing this website, I was experimenting, I was doing the community forum, the right place at the right time, and it was a full-time job when I was on furlough, which I wasn't being paid for. And luckily, it wasn't attached to where I was working at the time. And McDonald and the company were quite supportive, and I have a good relationship now for that to happen. But it was a bizarre situation I created myself, because I had a full-time job, not working, but working. Do you get what I mean? The project became a job, and I would have to turn up to stuff, and yeah, it was interesting. But to loop it back to talking about career coaching, and we had a little bit of a talk, and I think we both bizarrely were having the same situation, because at the start, when you were doing coaching, it was coaching in the wide sense. When you start, you're thinking about, is it CV coaching? Is it life coaching, which I'm really passionate about? Is it inspiring people? Is it doing this and that? And I became a bit of a generalist, and it's quite awesome to see you now hone in on that. So do you want to walk through that? Because was it certain parts of coaching that you thought, like you said, oh my gosh, I love this? And was there other bits where you just thought, well, I can do that, but if I focus on this part, I'm more effective?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I could have had to kind of go on a bit of a journey. But firstly, also from my memory, I definitely need to kind of shout you out, because we must have connected on LinkedIn, and then you just sent me a nice message. You said, I've watched a few of your videos and found them really inspirational. So
I did. You
were the one who could have actually made the brave step to me first. So I just, as soon as you sent that, like, you had me, I was like, this guy is genuine. Yeah, right. I've got time for Stephen.
We did. No more LinkedIn weird dancing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
New profiles, just like, human being to human being. Yeah.
Exactly. And so thank you for doing that. Like that.
No,
really kind of, yeah.
But no problem. When I was saying I did, just to clarify for the listeners, it wasn't like I did read the message, it was more like I did like your videos. And I was like, there was something nice about them. And I think what I quite enjoyed, and what I quite enjoy about all your stuff, Damon, in particular, there's like this pace online, especially in this TikTok world. And I've got to do some reels and stuff. I keep putting them off, right? But there's this pace online of information fast. And I felt like Adapt and Flow was just a little bit of a breather. There was something there, and it was quite nice. And it pierced the noise. And that's when I reached out, because I thought, there's something nice about, like, it felt like the pace of breathing, if that makes sense in a weird way.
Yeah. No, it does. Thank you. Yeah. And it's, well, I guess I'm just trying to just try to speak from the heart, really, be authentic as I can, and just say, and I thought the more I share about what I'm going and the journey I'm going on through kind of radiotherapy and chemotherapy and kind of before that, the build up to it, the more I share about what I've learned about life and, that it is okay, or let's say it is okay to let your emotions out and
Yeah.
have a cry or whatever release is good for you.
Yeah.
Blokes don't really talk about that kind of stuff, but I find your energy's got to go somewhere. So I just thought I'd learned so much and how useful letting go of emotions are through that period that I thought it's going to be good for me to share it, and hopefully I'll inspire a few other kind of blokes out there to do that as well. Because we can quite easily keep these things built up inside, and then they go somewhere and come out at the wrong time in a fashion that we didn't really want them to.
Exactly. Yeah, like as a management, shouting at someone or so,
Yeah.
in a bit, because it all comes out indirect, doesn't it? And that's what I've learned about even in relationships. No one's ever really arguing about what's on TV. It's all about these built up things about, I am frustrated in the relationship for XYZ. And it comes out like, your show's on again. And that's an extreme example, but I think it comes out in business.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, that's very perceptive that you've great awareness of that, Stephen. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm aware of it, but then I can be aware of it in my personal relationship, but it's very hard to tackle it, or it's very interesting when one person's got that, how to diffuse the bomb, because you don't want it to explode, right? Because that's the danger, and that's the interesting thing of coaching. But I tell you what, David, because what's really interesting here now, and I love the story and background, but we have a unique situation here, because you also understand architectural professionals for 50 years. Okay. So maybe just a little bit of fun, and we haven't prepped this because you know what I do not, and for listeners, I do not really prepare these. I kind of like to see where the conversation goes, but maybe thinking of architects in particular, there's going to be a lot of people listening here. And we'll start off with more, because we could talk about people in business who are managing, but also job seekers as well. Do you have any tips? Because a lot of the listeners are currently job seeking and all this stuff. Is there any like little tidbits that you would tell people in terms of adapting and flowing and just dealing with this stressful situation? Because looking for a job is stressful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's stressful, and managing people is stressful as well. So whichever end you're at, it's going to be, we create stress. I guess the key thing I'd say, the things that I've learned over the last year or so is we put so much pressure on ourselves. So take that pressure off yourself, and you can start doing that by telling yourself the right message every morning. The self-talk, the kind of, instead of kind of beating yourself up over the way you spoke to someone yesterday or the thing you didn't do that you should be doing. Should you be doing it? Is it good for you? Well, if it's good for you, do it. If it's not, then don't worry about it. So send yourself a nice message every day. Don't beat yourself up, because if you beat yourself up, it's kind of, you're fighting with yourself, and it's just going to affect other areas of your life, and that frustration will come through. And what you want to do is you want to build, particularly if you're job searching or you're trying to manage a team in a way that you want to feel confident. So look, there's so many uncertainties out there generally. So let's just assume that everything is uncertain. But what we can do is we try and build up our confidence by believing in ourselves and just trusting, slowing down. Like I think you said it earlier on, almost the power of slowing down, stepping back, and you don't have to give the perfect answer. You don't have to say you're on, you can do lots of work to build up to an interview, for example, in terms of like just giving yourself some positive mantras to say, today I believe in myself. I'm going to get the perfect job. The right thing will come along. I just trust the process and I trust me. And,
Yeah.
and also I love me. And that's either going to resonate with people or it's not, but find the right word. Look, just say, I think I'm ace. You don't have to say the word love, but love's quite a powerful word. So you can do the things to get your confidence there in the first place, as well as letting go of any negativity, because negativity builds up and gets us tense and stressed. So if we can let go of that, and I do that by going into a room at the end of the day and just saying, oh, I release all negativity and just shake it out. And that was a song, wasn't it? But quite literally, I look like an idiot, but it works. For me, I just have to let go of something because we're all holding on to some sort of negativity. So let go of that. But then when you're in a job interview or you're a manager in front of a lot of people or a small team, whatever it is, just take your time, slow down and take a step back. And you don't have to make the perfect speech. You can speak from the heart. And if someone asks you a question, say, do you know what? I don't actually know, but I'd be really interested to find out the answer. Don't just back yourself. And it comes down to kind of just trusting yourself a little bit, trusting that in that moment, you will do the best you can do. And that's all you can do. And what will be, but because you will be you and you can build up your confidence but just slow down, take your time and don't worry about the fear of judgment. Don't worry about the fear of saying the wrong thing, the fear of, being perfect. None of us are perfect. We're not meant to be. We're meant to be how we are. That doesn't mean we can't improve. It just means the expectation of perfection is just, we're perfect in our imperfection. That's the phrase that I think. So just take some pressure off yourself. Talk to yourself nicely, your internal talk, slow down and just tell yourself the right message. Those are a few very key, simple things. We can do that every morning and every day. And honestly, Wim Hof method, it's great for confidence. It's great for mental health, great for immune systems. So you don't get as many colds, cold showers and breathing retention work. It's done wonders for me. And so many people I know, through a group that I've become involved in, have either from mental health, clinical depression or arthritis, it seems to be curing so many things. So anyone else listening, please check out the Wim Hof method. And because Wim is just full of love, he's a great guy and he's just out there. He's stumbled onto some amazing techniques which have been there for a long time, but he's kind of brought them up to date almost. And they really are that powerful and they help us tap into parts of the brain that can really help us actually do anything we want to,
I'm getting like a free session here. I'm lucky. And I love it. A Win Half. I'm going to check that out because that is very interesting. When you were talking about all that stuff, I was thinking about interviews in particular because it's a big thing that comes up in the architecture social, and it's a big thing that I always think back. And I remember it's very normal, when you're younger and you go into the interviews, you're worried about what you're saying, and you think before you go in there. It's a weird psychological thing we do where we go like, they're not going to like me. I'm not going to get the job. And then it's weird because that exudes out, isn't it? To your analogy. And I know what I love about your advice, it applies in many different ways. It's just interesting in interviews that if you go into it like, they're not going to hire me, it really, that seeps into the DNA.
Well, you start to believe it.
Yeah, you're like this and you're meek and you lose that footing. Whereas if you went into it like, there's two things that work. I think either you be proud of yourself and you go, I'm just going to go into it, or you just say, whatever is going to happen, happens. And that works for me a lot.
And it's beautiful. Yeah, whatever will happen, will happen. And that's a great thing you've just reminded me of, Stephen. And that's kind of, if we could go into a job interview, before you go in, either listen to a bit of music that pumps you up or just do some slow breathing just to kind of calm yourself down. In through the nose, just really slow in and out. But then when you're in there, it's just, look at it as a learning experience. Just be curious. Just be, well, okay, I'd love to know about you guys. Here's about me. But it's a two-way thing. It really is a two-way thing. And when you can start to look at things as a two-way thing and almost a learning experience, use an interview as an experience, an opportunity to learn something new about them and let them learn something new about you. Um, and with that mindset, you can take the pressure off yourself so that you can relax. Because we all know that when we relax in an interview, in a speech, whatever it is, we can start to tap into our true potential. And just when you and I are relaxed, we're either playing amazing songs on the guitar or doing whatever we are. You suddenly just find this confidence, and it is there, and we can tap into it. So just relax, and it's a learning experience. It's a two-way process interviews. It really is. And the more we can think of it that way, the more it will take the pressure off.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well said. I've been so because the other thing is listening is a skill, and I try to always, so it depends on my mood, and this is what it all taps into, because I'm not perfect, but I try to stay in the conversation and be present, and I think you're quite successfully done that, whereas sometimes, when you go off and you're not really there. So I've not even done my sound, so here's a late clap. I've been very present. I've been enjoying it as well. And the other thing I'd like to add is I make loads of mistakes. And I think people think of mistakes as shame attached. There's a mistake, you're a failure, you're an idiot, these inner monologues. And actually in business, when I've made from mistakes come successes, you learn lessons, you improve, there's so many benefits to making mistakes. And what I was going to say, Damon, when you were talking about public speaking, the one I always think is live stream's scary, it's so scary, and I've gotten used to it. And today I did a live stream, and one of my guests, just the connection died for like 2 minutes, and rather than freaking out, we dealt with it. But the most bizarre one that now I know everything will be fine is, so I have this soundboard here, and I'm going to demonstrate it with all these quirky, quick noises, but and then with all these noises, I've got some voices, and if I click this, you can get a different voice. It's got these crazy voices. Now I got to put it back, but basically my partner cleaned my streaming thing with a duster, Damon, and you know where this is going, because a duster, and they got physical buttons here, right? So it cleaned it, duster, cleaning it on. So it was set on the worst setting, like a Mickey Mouse setting. And I did like 7 minutes of a live stream on my own where I talked about CVs on LinkedIn, sounding like Mickey Mouse. And it was only till like 7 minutes, one guy was like, "Have you heard your voice?" And I could feel, I had that millisecond of like the blood drain from me. And it was that moment of like, right, I can either crawl into a ball and die here, or just make a joke that I've sounded like Mickey Mouse for 7 minutes and carry on. I just carried on. But it's taken me this long to do that. And I guess what I'm saying is, if any of the listeners here are worried about their failures and stuff, try broadcasting out on LinkedIn and sounding like Mickey Mouse. Once that happens, it was almost liberating, so it should have been like a terrible, well, why should it be a terrible thing? That's again, it's why do we imprint this stuff as it being a failure? So I just wanted to impart that little weird story, because from that, I feel better when I make mistakes.
Absolutely. I can, and down to, there's a philosophy and principle from the coaching school I come from, and I sincerely believe in that's, what about if we bought into the concept that there are no mistakes? It's just a learning curve, and that's just called life. Everything happens for a reason, and if we can remove judgment, mistake, call it something else. Let's reframe it. It's just an experience to learn something new, and trust that we'll handle it in a moment. There are only opportunities to grow. There are no problems. But I love the fact that you just owned that, embraced it, and the more you own it, embrace things, then you do grow, and you suddenly realize, oh yeah, I handled that as well. And what's the worst that's going to happen?
Nothing negative happened, and it's kind of forgotten about. And in our head we build this up like the flashbacks. I always get a weird dream every few years that I was back in school and I've studied for a few years, and then someone tells me, well, you never went to your Welsh. All these weird things where you worry about it. And the point is, it all goes. But Damon, I always think like in these interviews, it's always the host is asking questions one way. So I always say to my guests, if there's any questions that they have for me, and I haven't prepared anything and you haven't, just whatever's on your mind. Do you have any 1 or 2 questions you'd like to ask me, Damon?
Well, it's well, I could ask you a lot of questions here.
Anything.
What is I was going to ask you what your biggest insecurity is, but that's quite a deep one, and you don't necessarily have to go into that because
I got a fit. They change. It used to be massively. I'll have to go for it. It used to be massively about failure. It used to massively be. I think like, even though I didn't know it, it's because I wasn't doing my part 3. That means I'm a failure. But aggressively pursue success. So in recruitment, I have to be the best with integrity. That's the thing. So, and I know you're integral, but recruitment, you can make a lot of money, and it's fine if you don't care about it, but you can have a high dropper rate, never a high dropper rate, because I always cared about it. But I had to be the best because I was completely insecure with it. So that's my biggest insecurity. At the moment, what I am aware, so what I've gone from being in denial, I mean, in the States of unconscious denial and conscious denial. Oh, I don't know. What's the words, Damon, of those things, with you go up and up and up where you're like.
Your awareness kind of increases.
Yeah. Basically at the moment.
Yeah.
So my insecurity as a person, because I spent so long building the architecture social, I set up my business. And so that's kind of there now, but it's kind of come at a cost to my personal health. So I've got lots of seats in the cupboard, which don't fit. Right. So that's like where I'm trying to get the balance. So that's that. I can feel that insecurity coming, and rather than bottling it up, that's why I talk about it now. That's why when you asked it, it's okay, and I jumped on it because I know it's the best thing to do, and then it's dealing with it. So my goal is to get a balance, because that I'm aware of. If you've given a lot, there's like that saying: first it giveth, then take it away. I kind of like that as well, because that's the architecture social. It's like I get so much from it. But there's that churn, and it's been on my physical health, which affects my mental health. So I've got to work on my physical health. And there you go. That was
thank you. That was, it's very much dealing with it. And I hope, I feel a little bit mean because that you put me on the spot there, and I was like, I really want to ask this question, but
no, but it's okay.
Thank you for embracing it. And what I take from that is that you've just given a bit of, take confidence yourself, but hopefully given the listeners a little insight into who you are as a person. It's okay to be vulnerable, and you're a great example of that. You've also got great character, Stephen. You're full of life, and that Mickey Mouse thing, it was almost like, well, you can pull that off because you're you, and you've got that personality and character to. So one thing I do hope you give yourself enough credit and give yourself a nice self-talk about how awesome you are, because.
I appreciate that, but you know what's funny, and I tell you what I am working on is receiving compliments. It's hard, isn't it? It's that weird. I don't know what it is, Damon, and I really appreciate what you're saying that. And I have that weird thing in the brain where I'm like, no, I won't make it. When it's just like, I don't know if it's the Chandler Bing thing, but you get what I mean, where it's like one was programmed to go to sense of humor or something, rather than taking a compliment. But thank you. I really appreciate that. There you go. That's enough, but that's a bigger one, which I'm more okay with. But it is interesting. We struggle as human beings taking compliments.
Yeah. I've gone the reverse these days. Well, not the reverse, but I actually could ask my mum and dad and Amanda by the half to tell me how well I'm doing. Sometimes just to kind of boost my confidence. I believe ask the universe for what you need. And some days I was like, how well am I doing? Okay, fine. And thanks, because I need to hear it from someone else, because I tell myself it all the time, but then the little doubt creeps in as well. So it's I've learned to just graciously accept a compliment, because you can tell if it's genuine. And yeah, from me to you, it was very genuine, and I'm kind of forever thankful of that message you sent me last year, and that was a genuine one. So I could see through the LinkedIn kind of dancing that we were doing before then. I could see straight through.
That's just weird. But
Stephen.
Yeah, and I appreciate it, but it's weird that it's more like I don't even know. It's like a tribal weird. It's like that's like recruitment, though. We could talk for hours of just how bizarre things can be, and I think that I would have a good time. You would have a good time. Probably half our listeners would be like, "What the bloody hell are they on about?" Yeah, we'll probably save that for another day. But just before we go again, is there any last little questions you'd like to add, Damon? Or
no, I think I just really appreciate you having me on, and look, it's just nice to kind of catch up, and so the listeners know you and I we've had a couple of little chats, but not really. This is the longest time we've spoken, so it's actually really nice to kind of spend a bit of time chatting to you. Yeah. And I'm sure we'll be great to kind of keep in touch in the future.
That's right. Well, I think so too. I keep watching the content. So everyone out there, I want you to check out Adapt and Flow. But Damon, if you could do me the honors of telling me where people can find you, that would be amazing.
Yeah, and that is very simply www.adaptandflow. So spelling the AND, adaptandflow.co.uk. And you've got all the social media links on there, so you can watch my videos on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, about me going through my, they're mostly about the parapositivity and the kind of journey I've been on through kind of radiotherapy, chemo for the last year, trying to turn a challenge into an opportunity to grow, because if I can do it, anyone can do it. And then we all have this amazing power within us that we don't actually realize, or we don't give ourselves credit for. You, me, everyone. We just need to tap into it, and it's life is that simple. Awaken that power and tap into it. So come and look me up, and just follow me from up afar, and give me a little comment every now and then. If something resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't, so be it. That's it'll resonate if you're at the right place at the right time. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's like a little calm, little oasis in this noisy online world. So that's what I enjoy. Thank you for being on here. I really appreciate it. You giving up your evening as well. But I have kind of enjoyed the chat as well. And it's kind of, what's interesting is that it can be relaxed and composed, yet we're recording, they're going to put it everywhere on Spotify and stuff. So there's a bit of a weird dichotomy there, but I feel like it's been a relaxed chat from the heart. So thank you so much. I will end the podcast now, Damon. You stay on the line while I hit the stop button. And now I got to look at the camera and say goodbye to everyone. If you've gone all the way through, well done. You've done an hour of your time. I really appreciate it. Drop Damon a comment. And if you have any suggestions or comments to me, feel free to put a comment and subscribe or whatever, like all them YouTubers say. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic morning or evening. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Take care.